Leaders of Tomorrow Season 10. It's been 10 seasons of empowering small businesses such as yourself and hand-holding and guiding you in your growth journey. I'm Sunanda Jayasilan. On the show tonight, I'm in conversation with someone who doesn't need much of an introduction thanks to a very popular reality show that we're all seeing and watching of late. But even before he became famous as a star on that show, he's someone who's known as one of the fathers really when it comes to the internet economy, disrupting that space. When people didn't even understand what the internet was, he changed the way forever that people are meeting their better halves. Yes, I'm talking about Anupam Mittal of Shaadi.com. Listening to this very special exclusive conversation with him.
Technology is playing a key role in almost every segment, including redefining the way people meet for marriage through matrimonial sites and apps to find a soulmate. We caught up with Anupam Mittal, a pioneer in online marriage market, talking about the rise of the internet, business opportunities, data privacy, and the marriage market in India.
Anupam, you wear many hats. Entrepreneur, investor, mentor, small screen and big screen hero. Which of these do you perhaps enjoy the most?
Husband, father, son, brother.
Wow, so you have been asked this question then previously.
Actually, no, this is the first time I heard this question.
Many brownie points. I'm sure your wife is going to be very happy watching this interview. Anupam, such a pleasure having you here on the Leaders of Tomorrow. Thank you for taking the time.
My pleasure, Sunanda. So great to be here.
You're someone who has been really at the forefront of what's happening and changing as far as the internet and the digital economy is concerned. You've been associated with the space for over 2 decades now. I'm very curious to understand. While of course there's so many things that have changed, if you can pick 2 or 3 things that you would say, this is the reason I feel we are where we are at when it comes to this economy, what would it be?
Well, let me talk more specifically about India because, the show's here. And let's talk about specifically what's going on in India and what the drivers of growth have been. So, if you think about the internet, it's been about 20 years since it's been in India.
Yeah.
And
you started at a time when no one even understood what you were doing.
I like to joke that we started on the internet when there wasn't any internet, right? 20 years back, there were about 8 million internet users. And we had these dial-up, incredibly slow, noisy connections, which used to cost like 16 rupees a minute or some ridiculous amount. You paid 4,000-5,000 rupees a month to VSNL to have a connection. And this 8 million number was sort of the early adopters. And every year we used to think that, okay, this year it'll explode and this year our business will take off. But this glacial pace of growth just stayed that way for a very, very long time. So the real growth in internet in India has really come in the last 4 years. And so today when somebody asks me, how old is the internet in India? I say, really 4 years. We are just at the beginning. So it's really when telecom prices crashed with the advent of Jio and the competitive intensity that took place. And everybody could afford the internet all the time, right? So it was not just about frequency of usage. There's also intensity of usage. And now if you see, people are always on. And so when the internet became something that every person on the street could afford, that became a real growth driver because without an audience, you can hardly create business opportunities.
Absolutely.
Right? So the TAM or the total addressable market just blew up in a matter of a few months. And it's just been multiplying since. So I think that was one of the biggest drivers of what we are seeing today. And of course, where audiences multiply, capital follows. So when that happened, very quickly you started to see a lot of capital coming to India driven by global liquidity. So I think these 2 events coupled with each other have really driven the creation of unicorns, the internet economy, the digital India, startup India, whatever you want to call it.
Sure. We're talking to unicorns across the country, and I will just come back and really talk about your own journey to becoming a unicorn. But we're in the 10th edition of the Leaders of Tomorrow. Thank you so much. And as part of a series of conversations, we are asking experts like yourself to call out the big trends and the events which have changed the way entrepreneurship has been done in the country. So you just spoke about 2 of those. I want to pick up on what is happening as far as the marriage market is concerned. Yes, you're saying the internet economy in that sense is very new, it's just about 4 years old, but the marriage market in India has always existed, and you've used the power of technology to really come up with what you do. My question is for someone who's watching this interview, if you could look 4 to 5 years down the line to say, this is how I predict this market is going to change, what could you tell us?
I think, if you think about the internet, right, it's actually very different in many ways from all the mediums that have come before it, right? And I'll tell you why in one fundamental way, in one sentence, right? All the mediums before the internet are simply mediums for information that you could consume and make part of your life. Whether it was a newspaper you read in the morning, whether it was a radio you heard on the way to your commute, whether it was television you watched in the evening. The internet is a medium that you can live on, right? A lot of people spend 12, 13, 14 hours of their living days on the internet. That is fundamentally transformational in every aspect you can imagine. So whether it is content, when we talk about media, whether it is communication, so everything's now moved to the internet, right? I use WhatsApp to call people. I don't remember the last time I called on a telecom line, right? Whether it is commerce, I hate walking into a store unless I absolutely have to, or it's something that I really have to look at, right? So we're shopping more and more on the internet. So I think with the community, right? So rather than going out and spending, the human touch will never go, and I hope it doesn't, but you're spending more and more time on your social media communities, right? Your meetings today, especially after COVID, we're not going to go 100% meeting online, but I think a big part of your, travel meetings are now happening online, right? So I think the internet is a place that is not just a source of information or medium in that respect. It really becomes a way of life, and it becomes your life, right? So, I think the changes that we are seeing today, and that'll alter a lot of things, although they don't seem like they are the ones that, will, but in a very abstract form, if you think about it, anonymity, right, is disappearing from the internet. Right. A few years back, you could have any handle. You could not be phone verified. You could not verify your email. You could be anybody sitting out of any little pocket in the world, talking about anything or doing transactions on the internet. Today, that's getting harder and harder. You still can, but for most people, it's impossible. If you're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, wherever, you can be identified, and you will be. Even on Google, you can go create an email ID, but you'll have a phone verification ultimately, right? So I think anonymity is going to become a thing of the past. Privacy is going to become more and more important. Particularly people tracking all your activities on the internet. Nobody wants that. It's spooky, right? And I think search itself will be broken down. Today we see Google being dominant, right, as far as search is concerned. If you want anything, you start with Google. But more and more we're seeing product searches are now happening on Amazon. A lot of information searches are now happening on Instagram. Before you go to Google, you try to look up somebody's handle, for brands particularly, right? So I think search is also starting to get siloed. So as these events take shape, the opportunities for small businesses become very interesting, right? One is because anonymity is dying. You can actually connect with real other businesses. You can verify people without feeling that there's a threat to getting cheated or duped, right? When you have multiple worlds of search and discovery happening, you can take your brand and position it to a very specific target market that is going to buy your products, thereby reducing wastage. So I think these are the things that will shape the internet in the next few years.
That's very interesting, and I want to talk then about data, because then data is that huge minefield that everyone is sitting on. For an entrepreneur, yes, data privacy is going to become even more heightened. GDPR has been, put in place globally. India will hopefully follow suit soon. What is your own approach to data privacy? How do you view it? And data as something that can be monetized by small businesses and entrepreneurs. What advice do you want to give them?
People don't think of privacy and data in the way that we might think about it from a business standpoint. They're happy to put up their data and expose their privacy as long as they don't feel violated or spooked, right? When it comes to businesses, though, I think the value lies in how you use that data, not the data itself. There's incredible amounts of data today available, and it's getting more and more commoditized because a lot of different people have that data. I think, like I said, the value lies in how you're able to extract intelligence out of that data, right? One way, of course, is this, which has always been, is you have very good observational skills and you're able to look at data and really glean insights. The other way, when the data becomes very large, is really to use machine learning and artificial intelligence to start to glean more and more intelligence out of the data. And today you don't have to learn all that and do it yourself. You can use models built by big tech companies or other technology companies that are already available out there.
Yeah.
So I think this power will become available to the small and medium enterprises as well as the economy or the internet economy further mature.
I'm going to take a quick break on that note. We're back in just a moment, to stay tuned. Welcome back. With us here on Leaders of Tomorrow. Our icon in the hot seat tonight is a unicorn who needs no introduction, Anupam Mittal of Shaadi.com.
Like every other service, matrimonial sites are a huge hit among users as the simplicity and convenience of looking for a soulmate on the internet has become a norm today. The first to enter the market in 1996, Shaadi.com is the world's largest matrimonial site. Today, many new players have entered this market along with dating platforms, as everyone wants a piece of the pie. Indian marriages are specific in religion, caste, language, and location, and the internet is the easiest way to find the perfect match. In an ever-growing online market, we find out from Shaadi.com how 25 years later, they're still leading the market with growing competition.
So you were saying it's becoming more and more commoditized. I want to take that and broad base this question and talk to you about the dating and the marriage market. I'm sure you get asked this all the time.
Yeah.
But even as you're the front runner in the space, you are the front runner in the space, but now you've seen many more people entering the marriage apps market.
Sure.
And then of course you have now the dating side of the market. So I'm asking you this question as someone who has a bird's eye view really, as far as the space is concerned. Where is this market headed? Can you sort of look down the road and tell us?
Yeah, sure. I mean, let's start with a broader question, right? What is this market, right? And let's look at India in that context. Earlier, this market was really those ads that appeared in the classified newspapers, since about 40, 50 years. Those are pretty much dead.
Okay.
Today, if
those requirements are gone, fair, beautiful bread, you're coming to that,
which is a great question,
Okay.
right? That industry is dead, right?
Okay.
Because we've disrupted that. Now you come to... let's segue a little bit. And in terms of requirements, that's changed. Earlier, you saw fair girl, father of fair girl looking for successful boy. These days, you see the word compatibility a lot, right? So it's moving more and more towards two people finding each other and finding something in common and then deciding to, get married. We don't actually like to think of ourselves as a matrimonial site or a matrimony play, right? We think that is something from a yesteryear standpoint. We think of ourselves as a matchmaking platform. And let me explain to you where that sits and why we think like that. Let's look at India on an overall basis, right? There's 20 million marriages a year, okay? 10 million, 20 million people, right? And so that's a large number because we have such a large population. Now, for most people, falling in love and finding a life partner and being blessed by the family and the parents and everything doesn't quite happen. It happens for a few people in college or at the workplace, but most people it doesn't happen, right? In the West, the question of marriage is not when, it's if, right? You meet somebody, there's a chemical reaction, and you get married. In India, it is a when question, because culturally, we have a phase of life, ghar grahasti jisko bolte hain. For human evolution, we all have to do it. So really the question becomes, when will you get married? As soon as you hit your mid-20s, right, that pressure starts to come from the whole universe. पूरी कायनात ऐसे लगता है कि मिलके आपकी शादी कराना चाहता है, from your mother, from your father, to your aunt, to your brother, to your sister. And the opportunity to meet a potential life partner is so few, right? Where do you do that? Dating is not really encouraged the way it is in
Which
the
is
West.
where people like you come in.
Yeah, you can't take somebody home and say, and lock your room or introduce them to your family and saying, this is my boyfriend. It doesn't quite work,
Yeah.
right? And so I think in India, arranged marriage is done, where people will simply marry somebody their parents suggest without meeting them. वो नहीं होगा anymore, right? People want to have a very important say. And even parents want their kids today to have that say, because they don't want to be responsible for the outcome tomorrow. Right?
Okay.
And so planned marriage is where we are.
Okay.
And I think that's where India is headed.
Okay.
That you reach a certain age, you culturally feel कि नहीं अभी वक्त हो गया, because तुम्हारी conditioning इतनी सालों से हो रही है, right? And so you now actually, with your friends, with your family, start out on the journey of finding a life partner.
Okay.
That's where Shaadi.com comes in. We think of ourselves as a planned marriage that potentially ignites love in people.
Sure, sure. I notice you're using the word planned marriage versus what has traditionally been
Yeah.
known as arranged marriage. Is it necessary to reach out to, say, a younger consumer base by doing that?
Yes, I think, arranged marriage has a lot of negative connotations, right? Arranged marriage का मतलब ये हो गया कि आपका उसमें कोई say नहीं है. You cannot make any decisions, that you'll end up with somebody you may not necessarily like, and that your parents will pick for you. I don't think that's the reality today.
Okay.
Nobody is doing that. Maybe in rural areas that's happening, but by and large in urban areas, you're not blindly marrying somebody. Like my father, he met my mother, I think he met her once, right? And they got married. That I don't see, I don't know
Yeah.
anybody who's getting married like that
Yeah,
anymore.
sure.
So I always say, right, falling in love and, those sparks flying happens to a few people, and, maybe God plays a role in that. And for everybody else, there's Shaadi.com, right? So God, in a way, is my biggest competitor.
Wow, amazing. You were talking about compatibility. I just want to go back to that. You're saying that compatibility now is becoming even more important than perhaps it was
Yeah.
earlier, or at least as a center point of starting the conversations. And my question is, are people like yourself, are businesses and companies like yourself then trying to change people's mindsets in that way? Is it possible for you to do that?
Yeah, I don't, I don't think we necessarily engage in trying to change anybody's mindsets,
Okay.
right? I think we reflect, as a matchmaking company, we try to reflect the zeitgeist that prevails at any given time, while of course trying to create more opportunities for people to meet life partners, right? So let's say traditionally, what would happen is you would have very strict parameters around who you want to look for, and you would tell your Panditji or somebody that,
Yeah.
I want exactly this, right? But you wouldn't have the opportunity to meet people who are maybe outside that circle. On the internet, because I have unlimited space, while I might show you exactly what you asked for, I might even suggest some people who I might think, might be very compatible with you. So from that standpoint, I'm opening up opportunities, but I'm not necessarily saying that, look, you should not think in, this fashion, or you should think in a broader fashion. That's not my call. I think that's disrespectful to people.
Okay. Okay.
So I leave that to them, but sure, I can present options that they might want to consider.
Okay. Let me switch gears just a little bit and talk about
Yeah, sure.
and to talk about your role as a mentor and an investor. I understand of the 200 plus businesses that you've invested in, close to 200 of those are considered startups, are in the startup economy. What are you looking for when you're investing in a business?
It depends on the stage, Sunanda, of the company and the business I'm investing in. So it could be different things at different times. But frankly, if I had to boil it down to one thing, I think you looking at a culmination of a few things. when you really feel strongly in your bones that this is going to be the next big company. And that typically happens when you see a very large potential market. So what I call, T3 model or a T5 model, if you want to expand it a little bit. So it's a large TAM, total addressable market. And you see this magical team, so that's the second T, who just fit really well in terms of their understanding of that market and their hunger, more importantly, to create a large business, right? And timing. And also from a, general cultural standpoint, the timing is perfectly right for a product or a service like that, right? Because there's a lot of products that wouldn't have made it big was it not the right timing. Let's take the most famous of them all, the iPhone. The iPhone really became the iPhone because the internet connectivity was ubiquitous when the iPhone launched. And so it could take that center stage of becoming the hub and an app store, without which it would have never become the device or the cultural icon that it has. So when these three T's come together in a magical sort of way, you kind of know it in your bones and you feel a very strong instinct that this is the next big thing.
What are the other two T's, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, sure. I mean, other two, and this depends on the stage of the company, right? One is traction, right? So if the company is post-launch, then I want to see what the metrics look like, right? How are you doing? Have you, and sometimes the metrics look like that and you're like, wow, right, in terms of user adoption. And finally, technology. I want to know how are you using technology to create, competitive moats, to scale in a very efficient manner so that you have pricing power and your margins keep expanding as you look out in the future, as opposed to having margin compression, right? So these are the 5 broad sort of parameters, but obviously there's a lot more.
Out of time on tonight's show. If you have any feedback for us, do let us know. Our details are on your screens as we speak. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.